today, we still have questions that need to be answered. Us being confused on what really happening in our life, how we deal with different challenges that we encounter. This time, we are going to answer this question and reflect on what really is important to us. At the end of this module, you are expected to A. Articulate the various philosophical views about the self. B. Examine one's thought and experience according to the philosophical views of the self. C. Propose an answer to the question, Who am I? Knowing oneself is only about measurable facts that pertain to the self such as age, height, color, blood type, or cholesterol level. But the philosophers insisted that knowing oneself is more than just the basic fact to know thyself is first an imperative and then requirement. It is imperative to know the limit of the self so that one knows what one is capable of doing and what one is not. The real meaning of knowing thyself. Then, as a requirement for self-moderation, prudence, good judgment, excellence of the soul. According to Ortiz de Landazuri, 2014. Knowing thyself is not just self-awareness, but also an ethical imperative. Self-knowledge is crucial for exercising prudence and good judgment, for us to know what really good. Original Greek expression claimed to have a very rich content that is almost indistinguishable in the English language. The expression is almost interchangeable, translated as know thyself or self-control. This means that the greeting is not only an imperative of self-knowledge, but it's also a requirement that one has to have self-moderation. Too much is not good. It could affect our lives. Too much power might lead to abuse. Too many friends might decrease the quality of relationship. Too many problems may bring about depression. Too much knowledge might take one think in the ancient ruler that there is nothing else to know about, and so on. It is just wise then to put oneself in moderation so that one is capable of self-control and self-judgment. To be able to demonstrate this, Socrates proposed a very emphatic philosophy. In Plato's Apology, section 38a, Socrates narrates, And if again I say that to talk every day about virtue and to other things about which you hear me talking and examining myself, and other is the greatest good to men, and that the unexamined life is not worth living, you will believe me still less. This is as I say, gentlemen, but it's not easy to convince you. Besides, I am not accustomed to think that I deserve anything bad if I had money. I would have to post a fine. An examined life is a life that is duty-bound to develop self-knowledge and a self-dignified with values and integrity. Not only that, living a good life means having the wisdom to distinguish what is right from wrong. A truly human life requires constant reflection, developing self-knowledge, values, and integrity. Not knowing oneself could lead us to harm. It could affect how we identify what's right and wrong. Insisting on the examined life, Socrates maintained that only those who have at least achieved self-moderation and distinguish what is good from bad. In this case, Socrates referred to the life of philosophers are capable of condemning those who are pretentious to be knowing themselves, when the fact is contrary. In his account of Socrates' claim, Plato writes, Only a self-controlled man then will know himself and will be capable of looking to see what he actually knows and what he doesn't know. By the same token, only a self-controlled man will be capable of examining others to see what a person knows and thinks he knows, assuming that he does have knowledge, and whether there are not things which he thinks he knows but doesn't really, and no one else is capable of doing this. Charmades 167a. Only those who truly know themselves and practice self-moderation has the right to judge others. Knowing everything and not recognizing oneself, and not knowing to have self-moderation and ethical prudence has no right to judge others. I know what I do not know highlights his belief that true self-knowledge begins when acknowledging one's own ignorance, making him in this view the wisest philosophers. Influenced by the wise pronouncement of Socrates, Plato proposed his own philosophy of the self. He started an examination of the self as a unique experience. The experience will eventually better understand the core of the self, which he called the psyche. For Plato, the psyche is composed of three elements. These are the appetitive, spirited, and the mind. The appetitive element of the psyche includes one's desire, pleasures, physical satisfactions, comfort, etc. Appetitive element is what we like making ourselves satisfied on what we want and what we desire to have. A spirited element is part of the psyche that excited when given challenges or fight backs when agitated, or fights for justice when unjust practice are evident. In a way, this is the hot-blooded part of the psyche. The spirited part deals with passions that are not strictly embodied, such as anger at being insulted of the tribe to distinguish oneself. The mind, however, is what Plato considers as the most superior of all the elements. He refers to these elements as the nous, which means the conscious awareness of the self. The nous is the superpower that controls the affairs of the self. It decides, analyzes things ahead, proposes what is best, and rationally controls the both appetitive and the spirited element of the psyche. The mind is the one who controls everything. It makes decisions and the one who controls the appetitive and the spirited elements of the psyche. Another concrete example of a highly self-controlled nous is the life of St. Augustine. He hailed from Tagaste, Africa in 354 BC. He succumbed to vices and pleasures of the world. Augustine was unsettled and restlessly searched for the meaning of his life until his conversion to Christianity, and in his confession he pronounced, "You have made us for yourself, O Lord, and our heart is restless until it finds rest in you." Augustine returned to his homeland and embraced an ascetic life. He dedicated his Christian life to the pursuit of contemplative ideals. He practiced extreme self-denial and self-mortifications. Later, he was elected as Bishop of Hippo. He fought bravely the errors of this time through his sermons and many writings. He died in 430 BC and later was declared Doctor of the Church. The development of the self for St. Augustine is achieved through self-presentation and self-realization. He was not afraid to accept to himself and tell the people about his sinfulness. However, the realization of the wasted self is achieved through his conversation of the faith. Thus, his journey towards the understanding of the self was centered on his religious convictions and beliefs. To St. Augustine, man's end goal is happiness. Only in God can man attain true and eternal happiness, made possible in his contemplations of the truth and the divine wisdom. God Himself. Christianity is the full and true philosophy. It is the full revelation of the true God. Human beings alone without God are bound to fail. Across various religions, the pursuit of happiness involves balancing bodily pleasures with the soul's demands, and recognizing and responding to divine love. Using Christianity as an example, it states that for St. Augustine, true and eternal happiness is found only in God. Through contemplation of divine truth and wisdom, essentially it posits that without God, humanity is destined to fail in its quest for ultimate happiness.
I. How Descartes, Locke, Hume, and Kant shape our understanding of what constitutes from the earlier modern period to the Enlightenment. The enduring quest for self-knowledge. The theories of Descartes, Locke, Hume, and Kant offer profound insight into human identity and our relationship with the world. Their debates continue to shape philosophical and scientific inquiry, reminding us the question of self remains open to exploration and interpretation. Here's a practical implication. First, critical thinking from Descartes. Value self-awareness and rational reflection. Number 2, embrace experience from Luke. Recognize how experiences shape belief and perspective. And number 3, fluidity of identity from Hume. be open to evolving self and avoid rigid definitions. And last, balance and unity from Kant. Both reason and experience are essential for self-understanding. Kant's framework explained how we achieve both empirical knowledge and a unified sense of self, influencing modern psychology and cognitive science. And there are three types of a unified self. First, inmate structure, mind's inherent categories, space and time, empirical data, raw sensory experiences, and last, coherent knowledge. Transcendental self unifies to form understanding. And here's the three types of a unified self. Hume's skepticism about a persistent self forces us to consider identified as fluid and evolving rather than fixed. This resonates with postmodern theories. However, it raises questions about personal responsibility and continuity of memory. And there are personal responsibility and stable identity, nominal flux, and contextual rules. René Descartes, reason's primacy. This perspective, attributed to René Descartes, emphasizes that our identity is primarily shaped by critical thinking and self-reflection. It suggests that through rational thoughts, we can uncover universal thoughts that define who we are. The image depicts gears and person heads, symbolizing the inner workings of reason and thoughts. Locke experience shapes identity. In contrast, John Locke's view posits that our identity is largely formed by our interaction and lived experiences. This perspective suggested that we are shaped by what we encounter and learn from the world around us. The image illustrates this with person pointing to their head, with the light of symbols radiating outwards, representing sensory inputs and external interaction, shaping their inner selves. The image concludes with a modern perspective that integrates both ideas. Identity is a blend, reason helps us interpret our experiences, and in turn, our experiences provide the content upon which our reason reflects. It's continuous interplay where both elements are crucial for understanding who we are. This image introduces Kant's concept of transcendental self, which attempt to bridge the philosophical gap between rationalism and empiricism, synthesizing rationalism and empiricism. Immanuel Kant sought to reconcile the ideas of Descartes' rationality and Locke's experience. He proposed that our sense of self is not just about pure reason or pure experiences, but rather a self that actively organizes and structures our perceptions in 8 categories. According to Kant, the human mind isn't a blank slate. Instead, it possesses inherent mental structures he called innate. Categories such as space and time, these categories act like framework, taking our raw sensory data from our experiences and shaping them into coherent and understandable perception. Transcendental unity of our perceptions. It is a key concept for Kant. It refers to the self's ability to unify all our diverse experiences into a single meaningful whole. It is the I think that accompanies all our thoughts and perceptions, allowing us to have a unified understanding of ourselves and the world, and thus making knowledge possible. This image describes David Hume's skeptical self a philosophical concept that challenged the traditional idea of a fixed and enduring personal identity. No persistent self. Hume argued that we'll never truly encounter a consistent, unchanging self. Instead, when we look inwards, we only find succession of fleeting mental experiences, like thoughts, feelings, and sensations. There's no permanent entity that underlies these experiences. Bundle of impression. He proposed that the self is nothing more than a bundle of temporary impressions that are constantly changing, flowing. For Hume, the idea of stable, consistent identity over time is an illusion created by our minds trying to connect the separate experiences. Look, the empirical self, blank slate, tabula rasa. Locke argued the self began as a blank slate, with all knowledge derived from experience rejecting innate ideas, and primary and secondary qualities, distinguished objective properties, number, motion, from subjective perception, color, odor, emphasizing the mind's role in processing them. Perception is highly subjective, shaped by individual experiences. The last discards the rational selves. Methodic doubt. Descartes questioned all beliefs, even sensory perception and distinction between dreams and reality, to find an undeniable truth. And cogito ergo sum, his famous conclusion, I think, therefore I am. The self is a fundamentally a rational thinking substance, the foundation for all certainty.
Philosophical perspective of four philosophers of Sigmund Freud, Gilbert Ryle, Paul Churchland, and Maurice Merlin. So, the first one is Sigmund Freud. Sigmund Freud is the father of psychoanalysis, predicted on a sex aggression with the unconscious mind as the platform. Present self or personality is greatly shaped by the person's past experience, utilize introspection as a tool. So, on the 90% of the time, man is unaware of his behavior, and often his behavior is to feed the libido residing in the id. According to the theory of the psychoanalysis, every individual is composed of the superego or ego and the id. Is it the main function of the superego and the ego to regulate and control the id? Accordingly, man and his unconscious mind is affected by the Oedipia complex, penis, envy, and construction anxiety. By large, man behavior is an interplay of sexual emerges and endeavor all to the facility, attachment, or near attachment of sexual gratification because of sexual excitation. Freud moved the self away from conscious and into the shadows. He argued that the human psyche is not unified whole but a battalion of three conflicting forces. So the three conflicting force, or what do we call here, is the layered self is id, ego, and superego. Superego. So the id is the primal unconscious seat of instinct and desire, operates on pleasure's principles, and seeks immediate gratification, while ego is realistic and rational, operates on reality, balance the demands of id and superego, while superego is morality and ideals, operates on moral principle, and strive for perfection. For Freud, the self is fragmented, most of what drives us is hidden in the unconscious. We aren't the masters of our own house. Instead of our behavior is a result of suppressed memories. And the next one is Gilbert Ryle, a British. The main concept of Gilbert Ryle is that there is a relationship between the body and the mind. Conversely, the body affects the mind and the mind affects the body. The self is affected by the mind, and by the body, the self is combination of the mind and the body. While the focus of other philosophers is veered towards the separation of the mind and body, for this British philosopher, self is taken as a whole with the body of mind in combination. The self is integrated whole made up different pathways and system. Is the ghost of the machine means the conscious or mind of creating physical entity. He believed that human consciousness and mind are very dependent on the human brain. Ryle took a sledgehammer to traditional dualism, the mind that the body are separated. He famously called this the myth of the ghost in the machine, the category mistake. Ryle argued that the philosopher like Descartes made a logical error by treating the mind as a separate entity from the body. And the other one is behaviorism. To Ryle, the self isn't hidden spirit. Is it simply by the pattern of your behaviors? Example is, if someone asks to see a university after seeing a library, the classroom and the students, they are making a category mistake. The university is the collection of those things, similarity. The mind is just the name of how the body acts. Third one is Paul Churchland, a Canadian philosopher. According to Churchland's folk psychology, will eventually he discredited by scientists' inquiry, indigenous notions, theories, concepts, and ideas will be supplanted by scientific method. The cell is defined by the movement of the brain. The main philosophy of Churchland is predicted by eliminative materialism. Principally, eliminative materialism contention is that people common sense understanding of the mind is false, and that most of the mental state that people subscribe to in turn do not actually exist. The world could be wrong, most people could be wrong, and even the mind could also be wrong. In short, everyone and everything could be fallible. There is no such thing as infallibility. The Churchlands takes a much more hard science approach. They represent eliminative materialism, which suggests that our common sense understanding of that mind, what they call folk psychology, is fundamentally wrong. Neurobiology over philosophy, they argue that terms like belief, desire, or fear are scientifically inaccurate. The self as the brain, as neuroscientists advance, the Churchlands believe we will stop saying I feel sad and start describing the specific electrochemical state in our brain. To them, the self is the brain, and anything is just an outdated story we tell ourselves. Last one is Maurice Merleau. So Maurice, the main articulation of the self philosophy of Merleau-Ponty is existentialism. Very vividly, existentialism is predicted on the premise that man gives meaning to his own life. happiness and sadness are dependent on the individual and his perception of his reality. Consciousness and perception are related to one another. Proponent in descriptive psychology, by extension, place the current interpretation of reality dependent on the perception, consciousness, and appreciation of an individual. Merleau-Ponty offers a beautiful middle ground. He rejected both the ghost in the machine of Weil and the self as computer Churchland. He focused on phenomenology, the study of experience. So, number one is the live body. He argued that the body and mind are indistinguishable. You don't have a body, you are the body. Second is subjectivity. We perceive the world through our physical presence. Our self is not thought inside the head, but a being in the world. The third one is the interviewing. He believed that our sense and our physical movement are what creates our mind. If you change this, I compared the four philosophers of their perspective. Like example, Freud versus Weil. Freud believes that the mind is a deep, complex structure that we can't fully see. Reinhold called Freud's unconscious just another ghost in the machine, a made-up place to store behaviors that we don't understand yet. Churchland versus Merleau-Ponty. Churchland looks at a human and sees a nuance and chemistry, while Merleau-Ponty looks at a human and sees a unified living being. For Churchland, the self is a biological calculation. For Merleau-Ponty, the self is actual act of a living and feeling.